This is the CineSnob Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 323 of the CineSnob Podcast. My name is Cody Villafania, and joining me this week, we have a full house again. Jocelyn Duran, Kiko Martinez are both here. What's up, fellas and feller? What is the female fellas?
Fella. Yeah, I don't think there
Fellettes?
is one.
Fellas and fellettes?
Fellettes, yeah.
Like a female horse, like a
Sounds too much like fellatio.
Yeah. All right, let me rethink that. Guys and gals.
There you go.
There we go. So normally speaking, we try to intro our way into like film news, and this week there actually is some film news. I think the biggest thing that came out of this week is that there was a new director for James Bond. It came out this week that Denis Villenueve, the director who has made the last two Dune movies, he's made Prisoners, he's made Enemy, and a number of other interesting films, is the new James Bond director. And I think it was interesting to see that I think they wanted Nolan, but Nolan wanted Final Cut, and the rumor is that Villeneuve does not have Final Cut, and that's what kind of gave him the edge. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. I'm not really a big James Bond person. I feel like I've seen... I mean, I feel like the last time a movie like this was made was when Sam Mendes got Skyfall, and that was like one of the examples of a prestige director getting a James Bond film. I know that a lot of people like the Craig movies, but a lot of that was Martin Campbell, who hadn't really done too much like prestige work. But yeah, I'm going to go to Jocelyn first, because I feel like Jocelyn is the more James Bond fan of the two of us, Kiko. Jocelyn, did you have any thoughts about Villeneuve being anointed?
I messaged you immediately and was like, I'm interested. Like, I think it's a great choice, and I prefer it to the Nolan. I didn't know that Nolan was in the running, and I feel like it's actually not a great choice for him, and I think I would not have been interested to see a Christopher Nolan James Bond movie. But this, I feel like I'm extremely interested in. I think he's way more sort of avant-garde than Nolan, and I'm kind of interested to see what he can do to the Bond franchise, and especially not having Last Cut, I think, is going to help, because they'll sort of keep it in line with the rest of the movies, kind of keep him in his little, like, his like bumper, like, you know,
you're all big studio. You want to keep these guys reined in.
I just don't want to see, an avant-garde James Bond. I
just
would love
said
to
that
see...
he's more avant-garde than Nolan, and that's why you want to see him do it. So,
but I kind of want to see him
straight.
with guardrails. That was the word I was looking for. I feel like him with guardrails could be really cool. I really am excited about this, because I think that they will let him sort of, do his thing, but just probably tweak it, I imagine. In James Bond, you can't get too crazy with it. It's sort of like a...
My argument is like, who fucking cares? But
really?
Yeah, I don't think that it's like it's not like a prestige franchise where like it's like not like they haven't made like a dozen terrible movies as part of that franchise. Like, it's not, the bar is not super duper high for those movies, I don't think, in terms of quality. Kiko, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I like watching directors that are, more on the higher end auteur filmmakers be given something else to do. I'd love to see something like, Yorgos Lanthimos do a Fast and the Furious. Or something like that.
Oh my God, that would be so insane.
I mean, and not because it might be good, just because it's an interesting mix. I mean, I think when it comes to these types of decisions, you have something like Greta Gerwig going to like Barbie. It's a big IP for somebody that started off in indie film, so you never know what's gonna work and what's not. Then you have somebody like Chloe Zhao who did No Man's Land and then bombed with The Eternals. So I think it's always interesting to be able to mix them up and do things like that. And I'm not a big James Bond person myself. I enjoy some of the Daniel Craig ones, and I think I liked a couple of the older ones as well, if I remember correctly, like Dr. No. Yeah, the Connery.
The classics.
Yeah. But I wasn't really into like GoldenEye and the early 90s type stuff. And then, so we'll see. Again, it's not an IP that I'm necessarily connected to or have a dog in the fight, but it's going to be interesting. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the super interesting thing is that James Bond has been sold to Amazon MGM, so James Bond is technically a Amazon property.
Yes.
I have to imagine that they're going to push for theatrical, but I have to imagine that also that was a sort of thing that might have gotten in the way of Christopher Nolan taking this on. I don't know. I mean, I think that you can add the sleek, personal touch, the visual touch to it. But, I don't know if you guys were seeing the names that were being tossed around for James Bond, but it was Harris Dickinson, Jocelyn, your favorite person from Baby Girl, Jacob Elordi from the Elvis movie. I think he's in Euphoria, I think too. And Tom Holland, Spider-Man himself. And those were the three names being tossed around. I saw.
Wait, which are all of them British?
No, Elordi's American.
Elordi's Australian.
Oh, okay. He was in Saltburn too, and he was great in that.
But Harris Dickinson and Tom Holland are both British. Yeah.
Whatever happened to Idris? I thought Idris was in there.
They want a younger guy. Yeah, they want a younger. They want a younger Bond this time around, which seems to be always the case, right? Where for a long time, this is so unrelated to it, but when they were casting Superman, they always wanted John Hamm to be Superman, but he basically was in his late 30s, early 40s when he got famous, and so he's basically aged out of that. But there's a lot of people who are stone cold, John Hamm has to be Superman kind of thing.
That makes sense. Maybe he can do a cameo as his dad.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting nonetheless. I mean, to me, it's not like a franchise that you're going to ruin either way. I feel like even with the Craig movies, I feel like I even thought that something like Skyfall was pretty average. I think a lot of people really like Casino Royale. I think that movie's fine. I think that Quantum of Solace and, a lot of those movies in there were not all that great. So for me, bar is not all that high. I don't really care about James Bond movies, and
it's all about. I mean, it's it's the pretty women, the fast cars. You have to be into the sort of superficial aspects of it to.
And Jocelyn, it totally is. She loves pretty women, fast cars, as we'll get into later this. Later this
literally,
episode.
What else do you want in the world? And even just to see what they're wearing and the beautiful things that they're wearing. It's yeah, duh. Who doesn't?
What about that guy from Bridgerton? I had heard things. Is he out of the running?
Oh, I don't.
Yeah.
He was not listed in what I saw. It's what's his name?
And he's
something
younger,
Jean Page. What's his first name?
Right.
Ray Jean Page or something like that.
Ray.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm sure details will come to light soon, but we've got that. The latest Batman script was allegedly finished by Matt Reeves. That is coming. The Batman, a movie I didn't really love. I don't know how the two of you felt about The Batman, the Matt Reeves movie.
With Twilight?
With the vampire as Batman?
with Edward Cullen as Batman.
I was cold on it.
I liked
it. Patman, because it's a Robert Pattinson. I felt nothing towards it, but that's moving towards being resolved, and that's basically it. So do the two of you have anything at all to add to this great conversation we've had so far on James Bond? Jocelyn? No,
I think I'm really excited about this choice. I think it's an interesting. No, I know, and I just think it's also interesting for his career that it's going in this direction, because Dune was a big blockbuster, but it's sort of nerd territory, and this is the opposite. It's James Bond of all things. It's the
well, I mean, good for
so.
Villeneuve for getting to essentially make 3 Dune movies out of this, and then getting a Bond movie out of it. I don't know. He's a super talented director. He's made some really good stuff. I don't know if either of you liked Blade Runner 2049, but it wasn't really my thing. But I have really liked both Dune movies and look forward to the third one. He's a super talented guy, no matter how you slice it. And I think that the Marvel takes this path. I think anytime that you give a really talented director the reins to a franchise, I'm always going to be interested to see what they come up with. Mm-hmm. But I'm always taking it with a sort of grain of salt, knowing that, especially in this case, knowing that he doesn't have final cut of the movie, what does this, how much of his vision actually comes out. And that's something we'll just have to wait and see. So
I also admire him for not, declining it because of that. Like, that shows me a lot about him as a director.
In a good way or a bad way?
In an interesting way, I think, because I feel like, that's like the ultimate, like,
could you imagine turning down like $30 million to direct?
Like, it's like a very humble thing to do, is to be like, just like give that back to them.
It'd be hard to pass up that amount of money just because you don't get the final say.
True. Yeah, you think he's
I would do it because I'm an artist, but
I don't think he's a money kind of director, but yeah.
All right.
Well,
then let's go ahead and move on and talk about this week's movies. We've got a couple coming up, so let's get into it.
Here are this week's reviews.
So first up this week, we have F1, also known as F1 the Movie. This is a movie that is directed by Joseph Kosinski, with a screenplay by Aaron Kruger. And this is a movie that is basically a big summer blockbuster racing movie that tells the story of a aging driver played by Brad Pitt, who is basically kind of like a nomad driver who has kind of moved from team to team and like level to level within racing, and finds himself being brought back into F1, a level of racing that he hasn't been in 30 years, by his sort of team leader played by Javier Bardem. It's a team that needs to basically win a race in order to keep its funding, and so he kind of joins up, teaming up with a young rookie racer, who's kind of like a young hotshot, and basically they try to work together as a team to kind of win a race to keep the team afloat, while the young hotshot is kind of playing for his own personal career. Brad Pitt is kind of like the old guy, sort of fighting to have his place in the sport, and adventure ensues. So this movie is directed by Joseph Kosinski, who I think most people would probably recognize as the director of Top Gun Maverick, a movie that was a giant box office smash for being like the big summer blockbuster that just kind of like, and in my opinion, and I think in Jocelyn's opinion, I don't know how much Kiko, but I feel like that movie is like the quintessential summer blockbuster, where that movie just like, it's great, it kicks ass, the visuals, the action is so great, the storyline really works, Tom Cruise is great, Miles Teller, Glenn Powell, everyone really works in that movie, and it's just like a great...
Val Kilmer's
great in his small role, rest in peace. And it's just like a great summer blockbuster, and Kosinski takes the reins here of F1. And I think when talking about this movie, I feel like, to me, it's a tale of two movies, with the idea that the action sequences in this movie, the racing scenes, which are aplenty, like this movie is 2.5 hours long and a lot of it takes place on the track. The racing scenes are really great. It's really gripping. It's undeniably gripping during the sort of like high octane impact racing sequences of the movie. And I think that it's done really well. It's something that Kosinski does, extremely well. He showed it in Top Gun Maverick, showing like the dogfights in those movies. And it sort of translates really well to, from going from air to land here, moving to a racing movie.
Did they do the same thing? Because the big thing with the Top Gun movie was that they actually had them in planes. So did they actually have people in cars?
It seems that way. I don't know, but it really feels like they're really driving. I don't know that you can really... It doesn't really feel like they're green screened here, or it doesn't feel like there's a lot of CGI going on. I don't know the answer to that question, but I feel like there's a lot of like actual practical driving and effects going on here in the movie. At the very least, I can say that it doesn't look CGI like a lot of these movies might. I think it looks really great. The problem is that anything that's happening outside of a car and outside of the track, I feel like is a pretty big whiff here. This is a story about like this old grizzled vet going back into his, the place of his dreams to try to see the dream through. And, part of the movie is that he is coming into this team that has a sort of, hotshot rookie driver played by Damson Idris. The character's name is Joshua Pierce, aka in this movie JP. And the problem is that JP is a huge character in this movie, and JP in this movie is basically fighting a one-sided rivalry where Brad Pitt's character comes in and this young rookie driver is like immediately, for no real reason, threatened by Brad Pitt, and then is basically out to get Brad Pitt for 2/3 of this 2.5-hour movie. And they don't really interact. There's no reason for them to not like each other. There's no reason for him to be threatened by him other than Brad Pitt is new to the team and an old guy. And I feel like this rivalry really kind of like a lot of the weight is carried by this rivalry that I feel like doesn't ever feel like it registers as being like truthful and authentic. Brad Pitt's character is like this, again, old grizzled vet. And, Brad Pitt is fine in this movie. I feel like it's been interesting to watch him because I feel like my favorite version of Brad Pitt is when Brad Pitt is doing something kind of weird or strange. And I feel like this is very straightforward Brad Pitt. It's like a little bit of like Billy Bean Moneyball, except for feels like he's operating on like top level in Moneyball, where this feels like it's sort of like a lower level of just like Brad Pitt kind of on autopilot here. I don't think that he's doing anything particularly great here. I think he's totally fine. I think Brad Pitt is a good actor, and I think he's totally normal level Brad Pitt. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like this story is just kind of nothing. I mean, it really is this like old grizzled vet coming into the team. A lot of the stuff that happens as he builds up to the Formula One racing feels very generic. It feels very unbelievable as well, how he kind of like, he's a guy who's been away from the sport for 30 years and then kind of settles back into the sport immediately. The way that he introduces himself to the sport is kind of like as this like disruptor to where it feels like unbelievable that it would ever, like fly. The things that he's doing doesn't feel like it would ever fly within this like highly regimented, totally like minute detail sport. It feels like completely unbelievable there. And I think that, it plays into this sort of sports film storylines pretty generically, where I think you can see where this movie is going. And to its credit, I feel like it follows through on something that a lot of these sports movies wouldn't necessarily follow through on without giving anything away. I feel like it is a sort of like fulfillment of an idea that I think is rewarding at the end of the day. But I feel like too many of the character arcs don't feel believable, especially in this JP character, where, again, I just feel like none of the rivalry really feels like it is, it's like lived in and deserved. And I never feel like the turn of this character feels authentic and real, just because I never really buy into why this is happening in the first place, especially because, like I said, the rivalry feels one-sided. It feels like only one part of this rivalry feels, like it's passionate, and the other feels like it's completely sort of like ignored and not even part of the story. So for me, it's like a split thing where, for a 2.5 hour movie, I think it feels every minute of that 2.5 hours. I feel like everything happening in the cars and the racing is really well done, really well shot, really gripping, undeniable. I feel like the storyline is kind of a nothing burger. And so, Jocelyn, you were the only one who saw this movie. I will pass this to you.
Start off by saying if Brad Pitt pulls off grizzled, what did you call him? Grizzled
vet.
Grizzled vet. Can he pull off a grizzled vet at this stage of his career?
For me? I thought.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
Cody.
Yeah.
I was getting Steve McQueen vibes. I loved it. Yes, I loved it so much. I had so much fun in this movie. And I think Brad Pitt this is like the perfect role for him. He's not a great actor. Like I literally never believe a single word that comes out of his mouth.
Really?
Like
Anything? You haven't liked
I really
anything?
don't. I
Oh
love him
God.
so. I mean, I love him as him. Like he's just so handsome and he's like so cool. And even in this movie, he's just like he's just doing the perfect Brad Pitt thing. But his line delivery is so awkward for me and just never seems genuine. It always feels like he's just thinking of the next thing to say, in my opinion. But I'm not going to hold that against him. I think it's why he didn't get an Oscar for a very long time. I don't think he's a great actor. But I think in certain roles, it's like, who else could do this? He's perfect. The driving scenes where it's like just focusing on his eyes, that's when I was getting like the Steve McQueen vibes. It was just like these piercing blue eyes, and it was just so great. And the driving scenes were just awesome. So I will say that he is extremely charming, and like I said, he's doing his best, charming Brad Pitt thing. So nothing to complain about. I love that you said the stuff wouldn't fly because the Top Gun Maverick thing, but I agree. I think a lot of it is completely unbelievable as far as like without, like Cody said, without giving too much away, but like just the things that they're doing to win. It's so ridiculous. Like it's like even F1 fans would probably, especially F1
I think especially
fans.
F1 fans.
I was about
yes.
to say especially F1 fans. I was my brother-in-law Kiko, as you saw in my text, he's like a huge F1 guy. I have 3 nephews. They're all named after F1 people. 2 drivers, 1 CEO of Ferrari. So it's Ayrton, Jensen, and Luca. So like this has been a part of my life for a very long time. And I was messaging him and I was like, I just don't think that like F1 drivers go to the hospital as much as this film makes it seem, because it's super like the Hollywood spin of the F1 story. There's that. There's the things that they're doing that Cody mentioned that were unbelievable. I will say also, it really was almost like the director. That's why I texted you, Cody, and said that he is just so great at doing a blockbuster. He literally almost has like a checklist of all the things that he needs to accomplish. And it's just like done, 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 moving on. Like, it's like a well-oiled machine. It literally is a well-oiled machine, like one of these cars, this movie. And I'm not mad about it. Like, I'm not mad that I knew exactly what he was doing every second. Do you know what I mean, Cody?
Yeah,
like
I mean,
the whole,
but
yeah.
I mean, it's just I think it's like whether you will fall into its generic beats,
the generic
or whether
beats.
you will find it generic.
Yes, but you know what I liked about it? He doesn't last too long on the generic beats. He just keeps it moving. Like, and it's like, yeah, that did make me empathize with him now. And that did make me see that he's like the outsider and now he's the insider. And now they're all like, he does this thing, Kiko, where like Brad Pitt like runs by himself on the track. And then by the end of the film, like everyone's running on the track with him. It's like, okay, I get it. But done. Like, check, they did it.
But I think that like it tries to pull a lot of the empathetic beats with the character of Joshua or JP here.
Right.
And I feel like I feel like that character is just like written in a flawed way, where I feel like I don't ever really connect with that character, because that character is like so off the bat and off the wall, sort of like combative, and
Right.
and I feel like none of that really tracks in a way that, again, like you don't really understand. Yes, track. You don't understand why that character is the case. Like, I mean, you could
care,
even
though.
in like
I
Top Gun
really
Maverick,
didn't
you have the
care.
character that's played by Glenn Powell, who's just like a young hotshot, but they show that he's like really, really good at what he does.
Right.
I don't really think they ever show that about this character in the movie, or give him a reason to be so threatened by the presence of Brad Pitt, who in the
I think you don't have to, because
in the
it's
world,
like it's so trite. It
Yeah,
really
but
is
like-
just
but-
like,
but Brad
the
Pitt's
young guy that
character
doesn't like the new
in-
guy.
in the scheme of things, is like a guy off the street coming in who's racing F1 for the first time in 30 years. So theoretically, nobody should be threatened by him whatsoever. It doesn't
I totally
really track.
agree. And I also will, I mean, again, like, I'm not saying it's a perfect movie. Like, I don't agree with all of those things that you're saying. I just do not, I don't mind it enough to not like the movie. And even him being American is like, really, like, it makes it seem a little disingenuous for the American to come in and, like, how the movie goes. But
That part I loved. I love America.
I just think it felt like, again, just a little like not just unbelievable, but also a little like ridiculous, in the same way that you're saying like that there's no reason for the rivalry and all that. It's just like, who cares? It was fun. It was like a literal perfect blockbuster. There was nothing to complain about. I feel like if they had strayed too far away from any of the things that we're complaining about, it would have been like, normal audience would be like, well, I didn't understand why they did that. Or, you know what I mean? I feel like they really had to kind of stick to what mass audiences would like. And I think they did a great job. And especially for F1 fans, oh my God, they mentioned Ayrton Senna 3 times. throughout the movie, like twice within the first 30 minutes. Like it's literally like if you did a basketball movie and they were just like Michael Jordan. Oh, he used to play with Michael Jordan. Like it's like so ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that was kind of funny.
So does it matter if we go in not knowing anything about F1? Because I have no idea.
I don't think so.
I don't think you need to know anything because it does a good job of like explaining things. And then for the Formula One fans, it's just like cool to see the different racetracks, to see like these, you know, famous races. And
I would be curious to see how
drivers,
legitimate.
like even Lewis Hamilton is like the villain at the end, which
Yeah,
I
they
know
show
my
Lewis
brother-in-law's
Hamilton,
gonna
they
love
show-
because he hates Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like that fun stuff for the fans.
I would be curious to see how they truly feel about the believability factor of this movie.
I
feel
agree.
Like
I agree.
It's probably a little stretched thin, but
But it's a movie, Cody.
Well,
like, come
whatever.
on.
That's never an
It's
excuse.
not an Ayrton Senna documentary. It's not like going to be.
That's never an excuse.
It's
A
the
movie
yeah.
still has to, if it puts its stakes in believable world, it
For
should
sure.
feel believable.
Yeah.
We'll get to final thoughts and grades again. Like, you know, there's other pieces of this that I didn't mention. I feel like the Hans Zimmer score feels like someone gave him the Challenger score and was like, hey, make this your way. It feels like derivative of that. I don't really think it's all that great. Again, I feel like from a visual, like high stakes sort of like action perspective, the movie passes every grade. I mean, like, look, the action driving sequences are undeniably gripping,
Really cool.
and like really cool. They're really well done. They have you on the edge of your seat. It's really effective. I feel like everything else that happens is extremely generic, boilerplate, by the book, sort of like standard. Old grizzled vet comes in to try to prove a point. You have your young hotshot driver who's threatened by him. You basically know how this story is going to go. The young hotshot driver gets in over his head. The grizzled vet knows best, but like stays quiet.
The mom gets mad.
The mom gets mad at the grizzled vet.
He's pushing him too hard.
Yeah,
It's like check.
Yeah, it's
literally.
very, very generic, and I feel like had this movie had anything that like would rise above the generic elements of it, it could have been really solid. At the end of the day, it is your average level blockbuster. I'm giving this a C+ for me. I don't think that the action sequences outweigh the story elements that fall short, especially because this is a 2.5 hour movie, and I feel like it really drags. I feel like this movie fills every second of the 2.5 hour runtime. Brad Pitt is charismatic, but I feel like his character is sold short. His love storyline is sold short.
Yeah.
I feel like this is just a movie that really flaunts its technical aspects without really having anything story-wise to back it up. So C+ for me. Jocelyn, your final thoughts and grade.
It's funny to hear you comment about everything because it's like I agree with everything. It's just what you're willing to, put up with.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because I totally agree with all of that. And I definitely think 2.5 hours was way too long. They could have tightened it up in a lot of different areas, including the dumb love story was really like, come on.
Who's the love interest? Is she his age?
She's
That's
20,
a great question.
She's 20 years
talked about
younger.
this.
It is Carrie Condon, who was in. You may know her from Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah.
But she's 42. Brad Pitt is 61. So she is age appropriate in a sense that she's not 40 years younger.
Yeah, in Hollywood.
In Hollywood years. Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny because, like I said, I agree with everything you said. It's just what you're willing to put up with because I was not mad about all of those things, and I was just happy, especially after M3GAN 2.0. I was really happy that this wasn't M3GAN 2.0. I hated that movie. So anyway, we'll get to that in a second. But I'm giving it a B.
All right. So let's step into our final film of the episode, M3GAN 2.0. So this is a follow-up to the first M3GAN movie, which came out in 2022, a few years ago. A movie that I didn't particularly care for. I didn't really find it like funny or engaging or campy or anything like that. I just found it to be pretty bad. So M3GAN 2.0 takes place 2 years after M3GAN's rampage, where her creator Gemma resorts to resurrecting her infamous creation in order to take down Amelia, the military-grade weapon who was built by a defense contractor who stole M3GAN's underlying tech. And I think this movie basically, what it boils down to is sort of like the cautionary tale of AI that feels like relevant in its sort of like AI warning sign kind of way, but I feel like irrelevant in basically every other way that it sort of plays its cards. I don't have like too much to say about the movie aside to say that, I feel like there are a few things that do work of the movie, about the movie. I feel like some of like a decent amount of the humor does play. I don't know how the two of you felt, but I feel like I was laughing out loud at Jermaine Clement in his very few scenes in the movie, especially early on. I feel like
how can you not? Like, he like is a scene stealer.
I feel like he is actually legitimately funny in the movie here as like basically like a tech billionaire in his part. But the movie kind of like plays itself really seriously along the way. I feel like and I think it's sort of like there's pieces of M3GAN that I feel, the first movie, that I feel like leaned into the campiness nature of it, like the dancing scenes and like the silliness of it, where this movie doesn't really lean into it as hard as I would have thought it might. There's a scene where like the M3GAN doll like has a singing, like sings a song or something like that. And it feels so out of place with the rest of the movie because it doesn't really like jive with the tone of that. I feel like if you want to set the campy tone of it being ridiculous and over the top and campy, you would want to stay consistent with it, whereas that feels like it's a very out of place sort of thing in there. For the rest of it, it just feels like, again, very generic, cautionary AI tech billionaire sort of like tale of it all. This is another movie that is long. It's like a solid 2 hours, and I feel like it has no reason to be as long as it is. And I feel like it just like plays everything really straight. There is like so much exposition in this movie where you have so many characters talking about what's going on and the tech of everything and why everything is doing everything that it is and why it's a threat. And for a movie that is supposed to be like a campy little comedy, it really gets bogged down in the details of its exposition of like the tech sort of like scare tactics of it all. So for me, this movie just like doesn't find the tone ever. I feel like it plays it way too straight, and it's sort of like AI tale never really feels like it's leaning into the fun of it all. My baseline for this is always the movie Upgrade, the Lee Wanell movie, about the guy who has like an AI implanted into him. He's like paralyzed and he has an AI implanted into him, and it sort of like kicks ass everywhere. And there's elements of this in M3GAN, but I feel like that movie is like the gold standard for like what you can do with like an AI movie, and every movie is just falling short of that element of it. So, I just feel like there's too many scenes of this movie that are played way too straight, there's like way too many monologues of this. There's way too many things talking about the threat of AI. And I don't think it's like nearly as entertaining as it needs to be. So, and this is coming from a person who like didn't really care for the first M3GAN movie. So for me, there's nothing really to sort of like, it's not like it didn't live up to the original movie, which I thought was already bad. But for me, this movie is kind of lands with a thud. But Kiko, I'll go to you for your thoughts on M3GAN 2.0.
Yeah, we're on the opposite ends of the spectrum for the original because I really thought that was fun. So the sequel didn't satisfy that guilty pleasure itch of the original. That one did it so effortlessly, I thought. I usually give like at least one or two movies like a pass for a guilty pleasure of the year, and I thought maybe this one would do it, but it didn't. So I'll talk about what I liked about it first. Was M3GAN herself. I thought they made her less creepy, which I didn't like than the original movie, but she still retained that Mean Girls attitude with her sarcasm, which I would argue is elevated, especially when interacting with Allison Williams' character Gemma. It's not super clever or anything, but I'm just a fan of her more like sardonic humor, where she's like, "Oh, did you think about that? Did you think of that all by yourself, Gemma?" Like that kind of thing. I thought was funny to me. Besides that, I thought the sequel was about as generic of an action movie that anybody could ask for. So the first problem is turning it into an action movie and abandoning even the most elementary horror elements of the film. So the original M3GAN wasn't terribly frightening or anything like that, but for like a middle school crowd, going out on a Friday night, it filled that genre niche pretty nicely, I thought. So maybe it was trying to expand the fan base a little bit more by turning it into an action movie, but I thought it was a completely bad move, especially because it didn't have a single original bone or titanium bone, if you want to say, in its body from an action genre perspective. So I got Mission Impossible vibes from it. I got Tron vibes from it. I got Terminator vibes from it. I was actually surprised that M3GAN didn't do one of those slow motion bullet dodges we saw in the Matrix franchise. I was like, I mean, it's going as cliche as possible, but you might as well throw something like that in. So, and speaking of dumb ideas, I have no idea why they brought up somebody like Steven Seagal in this movie. It was part of the story. And fine, make Steven Seagal a thing in this movie, but at least set a strong foundation for it. The little girl in this film apparently has like a Steven Seagal action movie obsession, and it doesn't come back as a plot point until the end of the movie. But by then you're just like, well, they've never even mentioned Steven Seagal again until then. So, you know, I thought it was just lazy writing. So, and then second of all, who are all these Steven Seagal references for anyway? These movies that these movies are popular 40 years ago, like in the late 80s, early 90s, when he was at his most popular. So when that came out, I thought it was kind of funny at the beginning. It's like, oh, okay, look, she has the Steven Spielberg poster. She likes him. And then you don't hear anything from it till the very end when they bring it back like it was a Karate Kid crane kick or something like that. That was going to finish the whole movie. So I thought, again, a lazy writing. The big problem with the whole thing was that it turned into an action movie that was just nothing at all interesting about any of the stuff that was happening between the M3GAN doll and the new whatever weapons grade Amelia, yes. So the fight scene at the end between them just was a dud as well. So I did not appreciate what they did to my darling M3GAN this time around.
All right, and Jocelyn, your thoughts on M3GAN 2.0? I know that you have strong ones.
Well, and I'm Team Kiko on the original, the first one. I watched it recently after missing it and hearing, that it has sort of a little cult following. And I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised by how much I really liked it. I loved the STEM elements for the women in STEM, like with the Allison Williams character. I'm super creeped out by dolls. Like that's one of my phobias. So it checked that box too. And I thought it was the perfect amount of scary and funny and fun. And I just enjoyed it a lot. And this one, it lost everything that made the original good, in my opinion. Literally it just went in a totally different direction to the point where you're like, what is this? It was a technology adventure-y movie instead of any elements of horror. It lost me completely. I really disliked this movie. Cody mentioned the exposition. It was it reminded me of Mission Impossible, where it's a whole hour of them explaining what's happening, and it's no one cares. Just get to the fun parts. The robot, the new M3GAN, basically is not a doll. She's it's like Terminator 2. It's like a robot. So it's it lost any of those kind of scary elements of a doll coming to life and murdering, because all of a sudden it's just machinery and AI and all this other bullshit. The singing scene, so the theater was kind of full. I could tell. I think, like I said, it has a little bit of a cult following, the original. It was a bunch of millennials, I would say, and you could tell that they were pumped to see it. There was what is it, Five Nights at Freddy's? There was the sequel to that trailer at the beginning, and everyone was super getting all excited about that. So I was like, oh, this is a cool crowd. They're horror fans. And then when the singing scene happened, one of the guys literally said, "What? What is this?"
But it's the same thing where she sings Titanium or whatever in that first movie.
It's that felt
shit.
different though. This new one just felt awkward.
Different. Yeah. Kiko's totally it's not, and that's why when I messaged you, I was like, people are literally laughing in the theater and not the type of laughing
not in a good way.
Yes, it was a shocked, what the hell is happening? This is so weird.
Because I remember the Titanium. I was laughing when she sang Titanium in the original because I thought it was just a funny
the tone
kitschy
is
way.
Totally off here. It's they literally didn't understand why the original was good, and then they tried to do something, and it's it failed epically. I mean, literally, it's just a sinking ship. So 2 hours of this, I was so bored. I was like, when is this movie
Yeah,
gonna end?
it's very lengthy. It's way longer than it has to be.
And Allison Williams cannot act her way out of a
Yeah,
she was
really bad in
real
this.
bad.
I thought
They were relying
yeah.
on her a lot too, and it's
Yeah.
like she
I feel
cannot
like
carry this movie at
I
all.
was less about that. I feel like it's a hard gig to do when you're
Mate, you're
acting
right.
against a nothing, like you're acting against like
True.
like tennis balls or whatever.
You're right,
But you can see her like
it
almost
was
like just
bad.
repeating lines. I don't
it was
know.
real
Just,
bad. Yeah.
and action. Okay, you got it, Allison. This time it took 7 shots, but you got it.
And like no, like totally monotone the entire time. Like there's no inflection on anything that she says. It was like the performance was really,
Yeah.
to me, terrible. But
Well, then let's
you're
get
not
into
interviewing her, are you, Kiko? I'm sorry.
No, he interviewed Megan.
I interviewed
voice of
Megan.
Megan.
Cool.
Who is actually a singer in real life, so I think she
okay.
wanted some. She wanted at least a one scene where she gets to show off her. But she's
Yeah.
a country singer, country pop.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah.
from
Very
Texas.
cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into final thoughts and grades. And I think for me, this one is easy. I feel like it is, this is not a movie in which I feel like it has a lot to live up to in terms of its first movie, personally speaking. But I feel like even so, this is a lesser version of the original film. I think that, it is a generic sort of like, uninteresting cautionary tale of artificial intelligence. I feel like it occasionally hits on its comedic beats, but only in like small doses. Jermaine Clement, there's a couple of funny lines that are in there throughout, but I feel like its main storyline gets really bogged down with unnecessary story that I don't find to be particularly interesting at any point. I feel like it takes itself way too seriously for a movie that should be really leaning into the camp of it all. So for me, this is a C. Kiko, your final thoughts and grade.
Yeah, for me, I thought the Megan sequel, is at its best when Megan is doing her best impersonation of somebody like Regina George. But the filmmakers made a colossal mistake when replacing all the horror elements for action movie gibberish. So this is definitely a downgraded Megan, and I'm giving it a C as well.
And Jocelyn.
Yeah, I was gonna do a D-, but then when you mentioned Jermaine Clements, I was like, you're right. He was like the shining star in this for me. I love him so much, and to see him just like being so fun and funny, I wish there was way more of that because he kind of leaves too soon. So I'm going to, just because of him, remove the minus and do a D.
All right. I'm sure they really appreciate that. So that's going to do it for this week. And next week, we're going to go ahead and take off. Me and Kiko have birthdays. There's only one movie that's coming out, which is Jurassic Park, or Jurassic World Rebirth. And there's nothing really opening aside from that. So, and I think Jocelyn's busy. So we're just going to be chill for next week. And then we'll come back, on the weekend of July 11th, where we will have, James Gunn's Superman, as well as some
what a good
other,
one to come back to.
Yeah, as well
Is
as
Jared going to
some
be
other movies.
joining us for this one? Is it going to be a foursome?
Oh, who knows? Jared has an open invitation, but we'll see. I feel like he is intrigued by Superman, but
Interesting, because it's DC, correct?
Yeah.
correct. But Jared is
you.
also a James Gunn fan, so
Interesting.
so we'll see how that goes. I'm sure we'll have some other stuff opening. I'm looking at the calendar right now, and I'm trying to see what comes out here on streaming. Yeah, I wonder how far away are we from? We're a couple of weeks away, or a few weeks away from Happy Gilmore 2, a movie that I'm anxiously dreading, as Happy Gilmore is a big childhood favorite of mine. And
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah,
More than Billy Madison?
I do like Happy Gilmore more than Billy Madison.
Interesting.
Yeah, I do.
I'm a Billy Madison person.
I like
But I
Happy.
think that's because
It's
of the
cool to
age.
pee your
I was a little
pants.
older than you.
Happy Gilmore and Wedding Singer are basically my two favorite Adam Sandler movies.
Okay.
I mean, I go pretty deep. I even, like, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Little Nicky, so I will go deep into the Adam Sandler lore. But
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, I will be interested to watch Happy Gilmore 2. I'm not expecting much at all from that, but yeah, it's fun to.
You could be pleasantly surprised. You never know.
It's fun to be pleasantly surprised, maybe. So if you want to reach out to us, you can find us at CineSnob on all social media platforms, including TikTok, Facebook, X. You can also find our YouTube page or YouTube channel at CineSnob. Please subscribe. Kiko, you've been running interviews, including you have an interview with Jenna Davis, who is the voice of M3GAN. Anything else that you have coming up this week?
Yeah, I also have an interview that I'll be posting with John Leguizamo and Anna Chlumsky for their new Apple TV series Smoke. So check that out. And then I have another interview with actress Fiona Shaw, best known for her role as Petunia Dursley in the Harry Potter franchise, for her new indie film, Hot Milk, which, if I'm not mistaken, is what Cody drinks before Betty Bite.
Yeah. I mean, they say it's the best thing to go to put you to sleep, so I have a glass every night.
There you go.
So thank you. Jocelyn, do you have anything to plug?
Nope.
Okay.
No
Sorry.
plugs.
All right. Yeah, if that's it, then thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back. Not next week. We're going to this is actually the first week we've taken off completely in quite some time. And so I would like to be given credit for that, because I feel like we've been on a bit of a streak here. I don't know. You two have been like off individual weeks. I have been here every week, because I am the brains,
Consummate
the heart,
professional.
the engine. I'm everything that this podcast.
Oh, sorry I
needs.
didn't do the podcast from the hospital last week.
Yeah,
Gee whiz,
Cody.
thank
Jeez.
Well, if you
So
would have been dedicated,
insensitive.
you would have. I mean, I think that at this point I was here, you weren't. I did not also receive a doctor's note, so that is an unexcused absence here. So it will
That's a
count
good one.
against you. But thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this CineSnob podcast. To read reviews, interviews, and more, visit cinesnob.net. See you next week.